Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion and the beautiful Katie.
Hi.
And today we are coming to you from the great St. Paul, Minnesota. And we are going to talk about the great comedian Louie Anderson. We're going to go to his grave, his childhood home. We're going to tell you a lot of things that you might not know about Louie. In fact, one of the interesting things that we found out as we were preparing for this, well, Katie, why don't you tell them what Louie Anderson, what TV show he was going to be in and then was removed from?
Well, he was almost going to play the part as Larry on Perfect Strangers. They filmed the pilot and they just decided that they didn't really have a lot of good chemistry together. So they changed the name and then hired a new actor, and then the rest is history, really.
Yeah, the character was originally going to be named Louie, apparently. So, yes, Daze with Jordan the Lion, Katie, and the great St. Paul and Louie Anderson begins right now. Not only was Louie from St. Paul, but he was about as proud from St. Paul as you could be. He often did local commercials later on in his career. He was often seen wearing a Minnesota Timberwolves hat or a Minnesota Vikings hat. And much of his act was about his family life growing up here. Louie said his parents moved into the projects. So this was the projects back then, and he said they were the first ones in the neighborhood. So this particular duplex was Louie's childhood home. He said it was a 4-bedroom duplex, and most of the experiences he would write about in Life with Louie, the TV show that he won 2 Emmys for, were based out of his life here. He said his father was a trumpet player for Hoagie Carmichael, but he was a real bad drunk and couldn't keep a job. He was always angry, but he said he was always two kinds of angry, either drunk angry or regular angry. And his mother basically kept the family together by being the opposite. She was just fun-loving and nice, and he said basically the nicest woman he ever met in his life, and likened her to like a mother chick making sure all of her babies get across a sewer grate without falling in, like kind of keeping everybody together despite the poverty. So he had a lot of stories about here. He was actually one of 11 children. He was the 10th of 11, and he was named after his father. So he was Louie Anderson Jr., which he hated because he said he couldn't understand why someone that had that many kids would save the latest kids to be named after the father, because he just thought his father was really bad. But he had a lot of great stories about, you know, he said he was always battled an eating issue in his life, was always heavy, and his mom loved to feed him. Said she would always make him grilled cheese. He could always remember the taste of grilled cheese with extra butter and extra cheese in here. And his best friend was his younger brother, who was the youngest of all of them, Tommy, who was basically like I said, the stories from Life with Louie were all lived out in here. Katie actually read that his parents were pregnant with 16 children and that 5 of them died at childbirth. So Louie said he realized when he was young that he was funny, because he said he had a rare kind of funny where he could make people laugh without saying anything, just a look on his face. And his mother was like that, so he always kind of likened himself to his mother, and said that he realized he was funny, and so that was something he always wanted to do something with. And though he loved St. Paul, he said he didn't love the cold, but he loved growing up in St. Paul and was very proud of St. Paul. He said the only reason he left was to go find his future. He had won a Midwest comedy competition, and Henny Youngman was the host of it and actually told him he should move to Hollywood. So in 1981, that's what he did. So Louie was no stranger to this area. He said for the rest of his life, he would come back here about 10 times a year. So if you think about it, that's like a once a month almost. One good memory that Louie would remember about here was he said he remembered watching Family Feud with his dad. And his dad would always talk about how Richard Dawson was slobbering all over the girls. He'd say, I don't know, Dad, I think he's just being nice. He's like, yeah, you would think that, wouldn't you? Somebody like you would think that. But Louie ended up, 1999, as the host of Family Feud, and I'll tell you how that happened when we get out to his grave. He wrote a book about basically his life after his mother died. His mom died in 1990, and he basically wrote a book and tells her everything that's happened in his life since she passed and everything he's going through. And he talks about in his book coming back and seeing this old house and the memories that it stirred up. This is where it happened. I believe he ended up marrying his high school sweetheart when he was out in Los Angeles in 1984, but it only lasted like 4 weeks. So we're gonna go out to his grave and I'm gonna tell you a lot more to his story out there. He always wondered was why his mother stayed with his father. He could never understand that. He said he always wishes he could have asked her that. So the cemetery is actually in Mendota Heights. He's in the mausoleums here in the center of the cemetery. So you'll see there's several mausoleums out here. His is actually the center, smaller one right here. And there you can see his name, the great Louie Anderson, 1953 to 2022. Wow. Sad that it all comes down to being cremated in a little wall crypt here. And it's sad what's happened after his death with his estate that we'll talk about as well. So basically what happened with Louie's career is that 1981, he said that he moved to Los Angeles at the advice of Henny Youngman. Jimmy Walker, Dynamite Jimmy Walker, got him in at the Comedy Store, got him passed, and Mitzi Shore let him perform there for the next 2 years. Through there, he got a booking agent who he said was actually Bob Hope and Marlena Dietrich's booking agent, so he would put him on the road, getting him more experience, and then he ended up getting invited to do The Tonight Show in 1984, and he had a really great first show. Johnny invited him out to the couch, and that led to many shows after. He ended up performing all over the country, mainstay in Vegas, making a lot of money, and then he ended up getting a part in Coming to America, which is really what I knew him from. And it was kind of funny how I got that part. He said he was a fan of Eddie Murphy and knew Eddie from the comedy circuit, and he said he just ran into him in a restaurant one night, went up and said hi to him, and then when he left, he went and told the people at the restaurant, go ahead and put his bill on my bill and don't tell him. And so he said he did that. The bill was about $600, and then he said he got a phone call from Eddie Murphy. They had told him after Louie left who did that, and Eddie called and thanked him and said, I want to put you in the movie I'm working on now. I'm going to write a part especially for you. And that's how he became that. You see, I'm washing lettuce, and then I'm going to move up to fries. That whole scene. What made you a fan?
You know what? I was really little, but I used to love his show Life with Louie. It was an animated series, and he was very candid about how closely all of the characters really reflected his parents. His mom was always kind of funny and witty and always encouraging. He did say that he downplayed his dad's part in it a little bit, but he always was kind of yelling and crazy, but he had a really good relationship with his brothers. So that's kind of neat to know that as an adult, that really was kind of a happy reflection on how he grew up.
And he did the voices, so it was kind of funny to hear him doing an imitation of his parents.
Yes, exactly.
So then in 1994, he got Life with Louie. And that lasted for like 4 years, and that became a hit. Not only a hit, he won 2 Emmys, and he said it basically for the rest of his life made him a huge star in Eastern Europe. He said Romania and Hungary and all those places, they just loved that show. And it was, like I said, you know, based around mainly him and his little brother Tommy's relationship along with their parents, because as he said, he was 10 of 11 children. He said by the time he came around, he said all the older kids were literally adults. The middle kids basically raised the younger kids, and the younger kids just had each other. So Katie, do you remember when he used to host Family Feud?
You know what? I do remember that.
I thought it was strange at the time because I knew it so well from my days of seeing Ray Combs do it. But he said that they actually approached him about doing it and wanted him to do a pilot for it, and he said no. He said he's always said he had a little bit of an entitlement to himself, and he just said he felt like if they wanted him bad enough, they'd just offer him the part and give him the money. But he said that basically the idea went away, and then the producers came back and said, hey, can you at least film a show for us to shop to the local affiliates? And he said it just so happened his family was having a family reunion in Las Vegas, and so they decided to film that where Louie was the host, and it was actually his family members that were on both sides, and they said it was a hit. So he got the gig as being the host of Family Feud, which he said at first, I mean, he loved doing the show for the 3 years he got to do it, but he said he admittedly let it go to his head. He said people were always telling him how great he was, how funny he was, and he said through that he became demanding, would oftentimes be rude to people, things that he said he really regretted. He said a lot of people that were just doing their jobs that didn't deserve his attitude or whatever had to put up with it. And he said, unfortunately, at the end of the 3rd year, even though I wanted to stay, they didn't want me back. And he said that was a big problem because he had not planned on that. He actually thought he'd be there for a while. So he'd been really bad with his money and was in danger of losing everything. He was a hoarder. He said he's a pack rat. He just kept everything, and he said it was after his dismissal from Family Feud, it was a booker at the Excalibur in Vegas offered him a year residency, and so he decided to move to Vegas, and he said that's really what saved him. He said he just could not afford Hollywood anymore, and he made the rest of his life basically out there in Vegas because he loved the heat. He could never have too much heat. His friends would say you go over to his house and it was like a sauna all the time. So he loved that about Minnesota, the heat in the summers and everything, but he just never liked the cold of being here. But yeah, just like Katie was saying to me, she said, yeah, he did come back 10 times a year though. So he ended up having, during his lifetime, most of his siblings had died. Tommy died in 2016. Literally, Louie was here visiting him, took him out to eat, and then took him home, went and played a show, and like the next day got a call that Tommy had died, and it just broke his heart because it was his best friend. But he always had this affinity for their mother. Yeah. And so kind of out of nowhere, Zach Galifianakis and Louis C.K. came to Louie and said, hey, we want you to be in one episode of a new pilot that we're doing playing the mother. And so it wasn't yeah, it wasn't a transgender role. It wasn't meant to be that or anything. He just said they hired him to be a woman, and so he looked at this as a excuse or a way of bringing his mother to life, because he always said his mother was like the life of the party, and he even took her to the White House when Reagan was in office and everything, and just made her a part of everything. So, and when he would do local Minnesota shows, he would take her with him and get her on the show, and she would often steal the show. And so he ended up portraying her as Christine Baskets, and it's actually the thing he was most proud of probably in his life. He was so happy that he said everything about her is his mother. The mannerisms, the way she dresses, the way that she mothers. And he did win a Emmy Award for that as well. So pretty amazing. He did a lot of great stuff in his career, including stood up for Joan Rivers. When Joan Rivers got her own show, Johnny Carson was kind of mad that she did, because she always guest hosted his show. And a lot of people knew that if you did Joan's show, you were blacklisted from Johnny's. But Joan asked Louie to be on her show, and he accepted and said it was groundbreaking. He wanted to be a part of it, and if Johnny didn't want to book him, that was fine. But he always saw Joan as once-in-a-lifetime talent, and when she passed away, he was one of the first people that Melissa called to be a part of her tribute. Even though he was heavy his entire life, his comedy didn't revolve around that. In fact, he thought that was just kind of cheap to do that. So he always based it around his family and never about his weight, hardly ever. And then because of his father being such a bad alcoholic, he had a rule that every year he would play a New Year's show that no one was allowed to drink at. He said that way people could enjoy it and they didn't have to go bar to bar. they could actually enjoy a night sober. And he just felt like that was a gift to the audience. And that's something he did pretty much throughout his entire career. Now what's sad is that he had 2 living sisters that he was extremely close to. And both of those sisters survived him. They were left in his will originally to inherit pretty much everything, which was $10 million. And mysteriously, 6 days before Louie died of lymphoma, his will was changed to leaving everything to his manager and his agent. And the signature did not resemble Louie's. It was all scratch. So the sisters have been challenging that, trying to get it reversed. But the unfortunate thing is that Louie had put in that there was a clause that if anybody contended the will, that they were immediately removed from it. So from what I've read, I couldn't find an update, but as of August 23rd, his sisters were still fighting, and the business representatives that worked for Louie for many years were actually trying to get that clause put into action to where they would be removed completely for even challenging it. But it just sounds really suspicious to me, and I've heard this kind of case before. It happened to Agnes Moorehead and several other people where they try and lock up their estate to go to a specific cause or something that can't be changed, and then somehow mysteriously the paperwork is altered. And that's what I've read is going on now. So I'm a little sad to see that he's not here with any of his siblings, especially Tommy. His brother Tommy, he was extremely close to. Rest in peace, Louie. I loved all of his work. I loved his stand-up specials, Comedy on Canvas, the HBO specials and things like that. That was what I really remember him as a kid, because I would stay up late watching pretty much any comedy special that HBO had on. So between that and Life with Louie and Coming to America, then they made the Coming to America sequel and he was even in that. So perfect timing. Rest in peace, Louie. Lonnie Anderson was also from this area, and that you read that they used to do commercials together?
They did. It was back when they opened the Mall of America, because Lonnie Anderson was kind of around the Roseville area, which is a suburb of St. Paul, just like Louie was from. So it was Lonnie Anderson, Louie Anderson. He was always proud of being here, and he helped with commercials, local causes, things like that.
Yeah, we saw that one of the things he was talking about in an interview, actually in his book, is that in the show Baskets, they had kind of a running storyline where his character was thinking of buying an Arby's, and he said that was important because that was the first fast food drive-through restaurant that his neighborhood got, and they loved going to Arby's. So he actually, during the show, was trying to contact Arby's into creating a way of getting local Minnesotans jobs that wanted jobs in the workplace through Arby's. So what an interesting legacy, huh?
Exactly.
You might be wondering why he's not buried next to his mother. Orizella Anderson, and his father Louie Anderson Sr., who went by Andy Anderson. Andy was a veteran, so they're buried in the Veterans Cemetery here, and like I said, I'm not real sure why none of his other siblings are out here with him, unless maybe one of his sisters plans on being buried here. But he said he had a huge family, lots of cousins and nephews, and they were all out here, so he spent a lot of his time in Minnesota throughout the year. Well, my friends, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Go watch some Louie Anderson. It's actually some great, for the most part, he was pretty clean comedy. It was family-friendly comedy, so it's not something you see very often, especially this day and age. But yeah, it's an interesting life that he lived, and it's kind of sad to think that after his mother's death, he spent so much time just thinking about how he wishes he could have been a better person, and he kind of, in a good way, put that towards everything else in his life from then on. So thank you for watching. Katie and I will see you next time from St. Paul, Minnesota. Goodbye. Kind of interesting, I just popped into a little shop to do some looking around, a discount store, and they have a signed photo from Louie inside. Take a look. Yep, that's how local he was. That was signed in 2019. Hope you're having a great 2019, Louie Anderson.